Okay, all right. We are now in the budget meeting, the FY '25 Acton School budget. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Kind of looking around the room. I'm not sure we have anybody new here tonight, so I'm not sure introductions are useful. So you don't have to describe yourself as your favorite animal or rock star or something tonight. Unless if you really want me to do that to you, I'll be happy to.
No, we're
You
good.
don't want to do that?
We're good.
Okay. All right.
We're good.
Okay. Actually, it was Jethro Tull, was it not last time? Right, Jethro Tull.
Joe, you can come up here on the corner if you want. If you
We'll find some space for you.
Yeah, there's room here.
I'd like to go over our stride statements and then talk about how the agenda's gonna work this
Is that
evening.
mine?
So what do you got in front of you? My book?
Probably.
Okay.
We'll swap those out.
Lucky for you, she already put papers in there.
I did. I already put papers
I
in.
gotta climb over
this.
So,
So,
Paula,
Paula, can I put them in somebody else's book. I was being nice.
Okay.
It happens
Throw 'em
now
at
and
her.
then.
There we go.
I can punch holes for you.
We'll put holes in after. Okay.
I got caught up with the kids.
What I will do is I'll bring us around to, one of them is to work in a collegial manner. I think that just the way we start our meeting shows that we're very able to do that with some laughs. But our 6 strive statements, and I'll get into how we're gonna do our business this evening. The 6 strive statements are we will strive to work together as a community that values the education our children receive at AES. We will strive to be fully present at the meetings by becoming familiar with the materials and by being attentive. We'll strive to invite and welcome the contributions of every member and listen to each other. We'll strive to be involved to our individual level of comfort. Each of us is responsible for airing disagreements during the meeting rather than carrying those disagreements outside the meeting. We'll strive to operate in a collegial and friendly atmosphere, and we'll strive to be responsible for examining all points of view. What I'd like to do is, we'll start with some information that was requested from the Warrant and Finance Committee. I thought we would get that out as a first agenda item, and then we'll move into the articles we need to take a look at tonight. And then lastly, we are going to replace some articles we've already looked at, because some changes have already occurred in the process. When we get to that third and final part, I'll explain more. So we'll start with our response to the request. The request from the Warrant and Finance Committee was, do you remember the request? Because we have it.
I will, let me just pull up the email that I sent you.
Sure, yeah,
Because I'm drawing a blank as to exactly what I.
right, because I have an Excel spreadsheet for you, and you have them there. You want to pass them out while she's digging for the email? Great.
Can you give me that? Are you giving me that?
no, split it in half and send it down. Oh, that's
She
good.
doesn't share.
Oh, she.
Okay. I sent this for one of our committee members. They wanted an organizational chart detailing the number of employees, the capacity in which they serve, and details on who reports to whom. How many students are we serving in the elementary school and also the high school? And how many students are served by the special education teachers and also the STEM program?
Okay. So that's coming around. Paula did a nice job pulling this together. I'll share with you. Paula, do you want to walk us through? It seems that you built it.
Yes. So our total number of employees was 57. We have 22 teachers, 13 ed techs, 5 administrators. We have 10 that fit under the other: cafeteria, custodians, office staff, nurse, social worker, librarian, specialist. And we currently have 7 substitutes. Our total enrollment is 247 here at the school. We have 82 that go to the high school in Sanford. We serve 58 students on special education. And STEM reaches all students, so 247 students for STEAM. Paula, on the employees, except for substitutes, are they all full-time? Yes.
Okay. So on the ed tech, can you break it down to regular ed tech and special ed techs?
I can help you with that.
It's just 2 regular techs?
2 regulars.
2 regulars and the rest
Yeah.
are special ed.
Yep.
Correct. Title I and pre-K are regular.
Yep.
And some of those special ed techs, there's one-on-ones. Do you know how many? Guess Sharon would know.
Do you know, Sharon? Did you
We're
hear
gonna
that
get into
question?
that a little bit tonight in the
Yes,
budget too.
Really, there's probably two, and the others are not considered to be, we try to move away from calling them one-on-ones
Okay.
because we don't want students to get attached. But we have several students who require IEP, under their IEPs, they require one-on-one support throughout their day. So I can't tell you the number of people that are one-on-one ed techs because we really don't have that. I have one at Sanford High School, I'll tell you that, and supporting a student who is an 11th grader currently, and I have one at Maplestone. So those are truly one-on-one ed techs because they're with that student all the time. I currently have a long-term substitute who is working as a one-on-one ed tech in Acton Elementary School because of a need that came up later this school year that we did not anticipate. So I hope that helps you.
Does.
Yeah, because
Yes,
I
thank
want to
you.
make sure, we have to pay these people full-time. You were saying they're all
Yes.
full-time, and there's a reason for that. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Just a quick question on this, if we're still on this. Could you reconcile the difference in the number of teachers in that red area there, or pink area, whatever you call
Sure.
that? You
Yeah.
have 16 there, but you have 22 teachers listed up as total employees.
Gym, STEAM, art, music,
Yeah.
library.
Okay, so
Yeah.
They teach all
not
students.
necessarily specifically in the
Title
classroom.
I teachers, yeah.
Good
Yeah,
enough.
Title I.
Good question. Okay, are we okay to move on from the warrant and finance information that they requested? We're good? Okay. Okay, we're happy to have answered that. So now we'll get into the budgeting process as we have in the other meetings. I'll just remind everybody how we do this. We're going to start with Article 12, Nutrition, which should be in front of you. I am going to hand it over to Paula in a minute because this one looks very different, but I want to go over the process with you because the next article, we're going to, special ed, we're going to do it this way. Kind of work left to right, looking at left and the blue lines across the top. You can see, we have source numbers, and that's all coding that has to do with the Department of Education, Financial Department. We have to code things so that they fit within certain articles. Then you have 2 years ago actual. You have this year's. If you go out 3, you'll get this year's budget to date, which the year isn't over. Then you'll have you'll have the proposed budget for next year, and then the difference. And as I've said before, there's a difference in monetary numbers, and then there's a difference in percentage. So if your percentage is 100% difference, like, boy, we're down 100%, talk to me about that. It might have been something that was $200 and is now $100. So it's really only a $100 difference. There's other places where it might be $100,000 and it might be 25%. So certain percentages require more discussion than others. I think it really depends on the amount of money. And you'll see some of that here that Paula will explain, and you're also going to see some of this in special ed, and Sharon will have an explanation of anything that looks kind of high north or south, right? It's worth talking about. So, Paula, this looks very different to the committee, and I wanted to get this right out of the way. Why has everything gone away, Paula?
No more food?
No more food. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, going through the audit this year, I was informed that nutrition, because we get a nutrition subsidy, doesn't belong in the operating budget, because we do get, normally, we offset it with a nutrition subsidy in revenue on the bottom, so it offsets each other. But I had to actually recode everything and take it out of operating. We're treating it more like a grant this year. So the only things I left in there were for repairs and maintenance and miscellaneous for anything that might come up that wouldn't be covered under the nutrition subsidy.
And that's the way you're required to report
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So you're hiring staff,
But we get a nutrition subsidy that pays for all of that. So
and if
it's
that
like
subsidy goes away, you still have the expense. And then all of a sudden, it's gonna show up as an expense someday, potentially, if the subsidy goes away?
goes away, we have no nutrition program.
Paula
So
starts
in the,
cooking.
yeah,
Yeah.
in the old model, what we would do is we would have this in the budget.
Yeah.
And then at the bottom, we would have basically the same amount of money that we get from the state, so it's a wash.
Right.
What Paul is saying is the auditors said you need to take it out of your operations budget and treat it like a grant. So we have several grants like Title I, Title II, and those are handled very differently. They're not in the regular operating budget. They're all accounted for and they're all audited. They're just not in the regular operating budget, and we had to move that out.
So we don't really know,
I was gonna say, how are you gonna?
how do you know what all your expenses are?
Oh, we still track
still
them.
track them.
And I
But
did.
it doesn't show up in your financials, though. It's-
Yes,
it
it
does.
will.
It does.
Sure, it's almost like a grant does. Everything shows up in the
Everything
financials.
shows up.
But to create the budget for next year, we've been told you need to move this out
Out of the operating.
of the operating budget,
Budget.
just like we would, the rural grant would never show up in this, because that's federal money that we get. You know, it's a nominal amount
it's
that
all
we use for student
audited.
service. It's all audited. Yeah.
So just use a round number.
It'll just show up in your revenues then.
Yeah, okay.
That's the way it's done.
Right.
Okay.
And it'll still all be
No,
listed in the
okay,
budget
okay.
book
Yes.
when that
Be
whole
helpful.
I was
process is
trying to tell
done.
Lee, that's
Yeah.
pretty typical, that's the way
Yeah.
they do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So, yeah, we learned that. I learned it through our audit, so I had to move everything out.
So it does give you an idea of what is consistent in our nutrition department, though. You know what I mean? You've
Yeah.
got a snapshot of years past, but, you know, we won't be seeing this moving in the future. It'll be handled just like a Title I grant would be handled.
So next year, we should expect to see just.
Just the maintenance.
The one line, the repair and
Two
maintenance.
lines.
Two lines.
Oh, two lines.
Two lines,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, miscellaneous.
They're just a
The dues.
contingency in case we need them.
Yeah.
Yep.
4,300 and 8,900. That's it.
Okay, so that's why that looks so different to you. Just wanted to get it out of the way.
Good deal.
It's the only one I think you're gonna see this budget season that looks like this. I didn't anticipate it, so I had to ask twice, Paula, why are these numbers not working for me? Okay.
Article 12 didn't take much time.
No. Article 3 generally takes a lot of time because special education is a good chunk of what we do here at Acton Elementary School. But this year, we'll look over the whole thing and we'll go line by line. But Sharon and Paula have done an excellent job at pulling everything together. And we do have Sharon right over there behind Paula, and her volume is up. And like we do with all of our conversations, we'll probably look to her to answer some of the questions we have. So I'm going to start the process as we always do and just kind of look at the first one, source 1010, which is salaries paid to professionals. And if you go over to the notations, that's special education teacher salaries. There's two of them. And if you look at last year to this year, we're down $21,000 and roughly 14%. So that's down, and that's a significant enough of a down that I'd like Sharon just to comment on why.
Well, one of the special education teachers who has been in Acton for several years, she moved into the ELA position, took Tracy Scully's position. So we hired a person to take her place who came in at a lower level. So that's why that has decreased.
Okay. Excellent.
Mhm.
Salaries paid to instructional aides or assistants. And in this case, you can see there's 12 special education technicians with an increase of almost 18% or right around $56,000. I think, Sharon, that would be the same question we ask of you.
Right, that's because we've had significant, if you take a look at my school committee reports over the last 6 years, which I could give you like the last 6 years of history, we have increased in our numbers of students requiring special education services. And not only that, but the needs of the students have increased significantly. More students coming in with autism, requiring, one-on-one assistance. And so that's why that's increased. As I told you earlier, we also had to increase our temporary employee our salaries this current year because we had a student move in that we did not anticipate. So we've added that position into this budget. So that position that is currently supporting that student is added into that budget now.
Excellent. Thank you, Sharon.
What was the increase in the number of students?
It went
Well-
from 51 in June to 68
68.
now.
Yeah, and we've had as low as like 36. So yeah.
Yeah.
So when I first came, so it's not something in the water, but it is definitely I don't know, the times, I guess, and people moving in from other states. I've found that they've caught the word that moving to Acton is a good place to be, and and we love that. But at the same time, we've inherited some pretty significant needs over the years, which I'm not saying that's a negative thing, but it's just impacting our budget a bit when it comes to the needs for assistance and ed tech. We call them ed techs. So
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Is
please.
that increased throughout the classes, or is it in the entering classes? How's it breaking out?
Did you hear the question?
yes, it's coming in from the bottom, like
It
coming
is,
in
so it's
from
gonna be-
pre-K. Yes. So we're seeing, if you see my report that I submitted to the board for their review, every month I give them an update on the numbers of students that are identified with special needs that attend Acton Elementary School. And you can see that kindergarten is pretty high this year, but that hasn't always been the case. So, they're coming in with more significant needs than in previous years. That's all. That's the only thing that I can attribute that to. And we want to make sure that these kids get what they need. And our hope is that they won't need that level of support as they move through the years, that we can wean that away from them, and they can be more, our hope is that we can teach them to be more self-sufficient.
So there will be one increased ed tech then, right? Okay.
All right, I also wanted, I don't know if you spoke about this
I'm sorry.
in the administrative reports, but you had mentioned that Maine is asking for schools to volunteer to take over services for the pre-K students with special needs beginning this school year coming. So is that in the budget?
No, so we have not, we're not one of the districts that's volunteered this year.
Right.
So
It's a 3-year process. Yeah.
So so they're asking for they're hoping to get 1/3 of the school districts to
Right.
do it next year, and then the second third to do it the following year, and then the implementation for everyone would begin on 26, 27.
I know,
That's
but
what they're
it
looking.
says 3 and
and like-
4-year-olds.
Correct.
I mean, we
Yes.
don't have 3-year-olds here, do we?
We
Well,
will
no.
with this change.
Right. So the
Every district in the
3-year-olds.
state.
Right, yeah. I'm gonna keep you posted because I'm staying right on top of this matter,
Yeah.
believe me, and I go to every meeting that addresses this. And I wanna make sure that whatever happens, that we're well prepared for this, so.
Right, and Sharon has been, I went to one meeting and she's been to several since then. We went to one together, just to kind of get the concept. And just to kind of wrap this up in an idea of what's happening is CDS takes care of children's in that age range right now. There's a federal audit that's happening to the state's saying we need to change our plan, and the plan will be, we're gonna phase in that group of kids to public schools across the state of Maine over a 3-year process. We didn't raise our hand for year 1. Always good to wait and see what happens. So, we could be as soon as the following year or the year after that, but we're not immune to it. It's every school in the state of Maine.
Did they have a discussion about
Where to
funding
put-
Yes.
differences?
Yes, there is, and I think we can definitely make that an agenda item for a future meeting, because I think it's important
Yeah.
that Sharon and I present to you what the state has said, hey, we're gonna give you these kids and we're gonna support them this way. I couldn't just freelance it tonight and tell you what that is, but it's all there and it's in the plan, and Sharon sent me the plan this week. Yeah.
Now, didn't we also have to find an ed tech that CDS couldn't find?
So that situation is with high-need students that are in our pre-K program. So pre-K is 4-year-olds, and if a student comes with an IEP at 4 years old, it's not really our IEP, it's CDS's, but they had a hard time trying to find people to support. So what Sharon did is, she found somebody to support them, and I believe you billed CDS for her time, is that correct? So, once they turn
Yes,
five, they're ours.
there was actually two of them.
Two of them, yeah.
Two of them. And I made sure that I re-invoiced CDS every month,
Yep.
and they paid us back for the services that they could not provide, so.
Who's CDS?
Child Development Services.
Good enough.
Yeah,
My point in bringing that up is
Yeah.
how Sharon went above and beyond to make sure that our kids got what they needed within, you know, it
You
didn't, it
bet.
didn't cost us because
Nope.
CDS
right.
Of course, Sharon.
reimbursed, but it cost Sharon the effort, I'm sure.
She had to find the people
Yeah.
Exactly.
and do
And
the
if the
billing.
people stay here, then it will cost us.
What's that?
If they're
If the people stay here,
yes.
then it will cost
The
us.
transition happens roughly 5 years old to kindergarten.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right, Lee. I mean, if they're gonna live in the town.
Yeah.
The one thing that is nice about pre-K is we get a preview of who they are. Whereas in the old model, when you didn't have pre-K, they show up and you go, oh gosh, I didn't know I needed to budget for that. So, yeah. Yeah.
Is that a
But if all
federal program?
It's actually at the state level, Joe. There's Head Starts, there's federal programs such as that around the country. But in Maine right now, that young cohort, 3 and 4-year-olds are covered through CDS, and school districts are gonna pick up the 3-year-olds
Yeah.
in a matter of 3 years.
We are the only state in the entire country that does not take care of our pre-K, 3 and 4-year-olds. So when I was in Rochester years ago, we took care of them. It's been in New Hampshire for years. So I was kind of surprised when I moved back to Maine and I saw that they hadn't taken over. So I'm not surprised that they're going to try to shift the responsibility to us. It's just that it needs to be done, you know, thoughtfully and slowly and gradually, because I feel for the smaller districts like us and the ones up north that don't have the capacity to do these things. I mean, SAD 60 down the road, which is North Berwick and Lebanon, they don't even have a pre-K program.
Right.
They don't even have one. So, I mean, at least we have a pre-K program that we can funnel our kids into, which we do now. So we do pretty much like 80% already of what they're asking us to do. So I think we're in a good spot, but I just don't want to volunteer yet, so.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thanks.
I think Sanford still has a lottery system for pre-K, don't they?
Yeah.
Sanford still has a lottery system for pre-K.
Are you responsible for the transportation of these younger kids?
We will be, if we take
And they
over,
have special seats in the buses.
just like
I was just
pre-K.
wondering, at 3
Yep.
and 4 years old.
So would
younger.
3-year-olds
In the
come into
space.
pre-K?
It would be a different program.
Okay, so it'd be like a more
daycare,
nursery
yeah.
school?
We'll have to look at
Well,
models.
In New York, it was
There'll be
nursery
models.
school.
Yeah,
It was half a day or
yeah, that's what it was called.
Sharon, go ahead. Oh, Sharon, you're on mute, we can't hear you.
So currently in our pre-K, our current pre-K, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 6 students that have IEPs in our current pre-K.
So that's
Okay.
like half the.
There's 15,
And we
14
have
kids.
2 students who are in referral for pre-K. So we're talking about 8 students
That's half
in
your
our
students.
current pre-K. That's half of the student population in our pre-K that have IEPs.
Gotta be in the water.
So that just gives you a kind of some perspective of what we're up against and what has been happening gradually. This hasn't been the case in the past. It's just happening gradually. It's like, I don't know if COVID had something to do with it. I don't know. But it's not just Acton. It's happening everywhere. So.
So my last point on this before we move on is, and Sharon, I'll make sure we're lockstep on this. Schools will be getting CDS kids, not 3-year-olds from the private sector that don't have any diagnosed needs. Only the students, that-
Only 4-year-olds.
only 4-year-olds, okay.
Yes.
But 3-year-olds, can a 3-year-old come with an E IEP?
3-year-olds, we'd be responsible for overseeing their programming,
Okay.
but they wouldn't necessarily come to school.
Okay.
You know,
Okay,
we may have to send like a speech pathologist over to their daycare center.
Okay,
Or,
so So
Or
space
we
and
may-
busing.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Okay.
We may have to provide those services, but we don't have to have like a 3-year-old program
Got it.
that's in our
Okay.
school.
All right.
That's not what
we
I'm.
were thinking.
Yeah.
All right, Sharon, that's very helpful. That's why I kind of asked the question.
That's a good budgetary
Yeah,
item.
because Joyce just
It's
asked,
huge.
what about space?
It's
I'm like, yeah.
absolutely huge.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Okay, so we good on that one piece that came up? Okay. I do believe we are at after-school tutoring, which is 1, 2, 3 down, 4 down, and it's basically flat, and Paula and I talked about that today. That's because we're taking it away because we don't use it anymore. And that's the special ed after-school tutoring.
Yeah, we haven't used that in
No.
like 5 years,
Okay.
so I'm like, why do we keep that in there? So,
Okay.
Salaries to temporary employees paid to substitutes. Now, that's doubled. It's still not super high, but it doubled from 10 to 20, so it's up 10 grand or 100%. Let's talk a little bit about our substitute pool and how you're currently using them, because I think it's a good deal, to be honest with you.
right. Okay, so what happened this year, as I told you, is we had a need to bring in substitutes because of students that had moved in that we did not anticipate. So sometimes students just land on our doorstep and we're like, where did this kid come from? And they require additional support. So that's what happened this year, and I want to safeguard us against that this year. So I thought we would make sure that we could increase that a little bit just in case, because it typically it's hopefully it doesn't happen, but it may. So
Okay. And it has. And it
Oh,
has
yeah.
happened. We have been experiencing that.
yes,
Sorry,
So,
can we go back to 1210 for a sec? It
This-
says percent increase -1%. I just want to make, here?
that should be
It
zero,
should
right?
be
Be a zero.
That should be a zero.
Yeah, I just want
That
to make
could
sure
be
it
a
doesn't screw up
typo.
your spreadsheet.
Well, that's great that it's negative one.
Calculation.
yeah, it's actually less than 1, Sharon. I was
I
waiting,
wanted you to be under a certain
I
number.
was waiting for her to find a
Or
comma in
actually, it
there.
should be negative 100%.
100.
Yeah,
Right?
There's another
Is she
one.
paying back the
There you go.
1%?
Yeah, right, where's that coming from?
No, but yeah, it should be
Okay.
negative
Negative
100%.
Negative
Yeah.
100 is
Well,
gone.
It's gonna be there in tutor benefits, just down a little bit.
It's gonna be the same thing. I want to just mention to the committees that source number 2010, all the way down to the second to last one, are all about retirement and Social Security, and I went over this last time with both committees. These are all fixed costs that have to do with, retirement and benefits. We don't control any of it. So if you want to look at those, there's several of them. It's 2010, all the way down to 2320, and then we'll stop and move to the next one. That's the second one from the bottom.
And some of the bigger increases would be adding a person for next year.
They should be synonymous with the addition up top, correct?
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so those are all figures that Paula plugs in that are kind of like employment costs for us, for having employees, all right? Knowing that, let's take a look at professional development, which is $3,300, the last one, which is flat at $2,000, no change moving into next year. We're gonna need to turn the page and work from the top. Try to recall what your categories are. We're really looking at looking at the last 1, 2, 3 and the notations, because we get into some big numbers here. So special education contracted services is up 107%. And we're gonna talk about that. Now, I'm gonna look to Sharon and Paula. This is where that
Yeah.
extra
A
placeholder
little
we have.
confusing.
This is the
So-
placeholder one, right?
Right, so,
I'll talk, you wanna talk about that? You want me to talk about that?
well, you can talk about your piece. If
Okay.
you want to start with that, and then I'll talk about my piece.
Let me talk about my piece first, because it
Okay.
may not happen. Your piece
Okay.
will happen, my piece may
Okay.
not.
Yeah.
So there's in this 107% increase, or in the 173,740, there's $80,000 that's a placeholder. The reason there's an $80,000 placeholder right there is we have a person in our school that requires an outside contractor in the way of a medical provider. The medical provider is here at the school with our student, okay? So what we're looking at is, this person showed up unbeknownst to us this summer, so we weren't ready for it. We're working with it, students thriving, it's working out great. But there's a cost to that, to the school. So moving into next year, we gotta look at what our medical provider staff on board already has for a client-student basis. What can our current RN in the building do, okay? What are the needs of this particular individual student that's thriving here? And we're already looking at a couple of different options where we might be able to use an outside resource to pay for that particular student's needs, so it won't be a cost to the district. I can't tell you that now. I'll know that by the time we vote on the budget, because we have to look at a number of options. But at the end of the day, will this individual need an $80,000 resource to make it through his or her day at school? The answer might be yes, that's why it's in there. I didn't want to add it at the last second. I put it in there with the idea that we're probably going to remove it, okay? We're working options, we're looking at things where we may have an outside source that's just going to pick up the tab. And that's looking pretty good, but we need more time to figure that out. All right, I'm being specific to the budget, but very general to the person, because we don't want to identify anybody. Okay? All right. Sharon, I'll give you the rest.
Okay, so the last few years, the budget, we have been accidentally, I guess is the word. I don't know if I want to call it accidental, Paula, but we have been paying. What?
She said she wasn't here.
Oh, okay, yeah. Paying, we have a student that attends a special purpose private school out of state. And this student requires like OT, PT, speech, a lot of services that we consider to be contracted services, which is like occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, transportation. All of these things are required for this student. And so we've been paying that under the auspices of tuition. So you'll see that the tuition account has shifted too, and we'll get to that down there. So what we did is we moved that contracted need for contracted services to that account. So it's going to cover pretty much all of the contracted services for the student who attends an out-of-district special purpose private school out of state.
And we'll see
And
the
we just shifted it over
right.
to a different, from tuition, we shifted
Correct.
it over to contracted.
And we've done
Does
that in
make
past
sense?
budgets, right? So you'll see the difference when we get to that line.
Right.
Right, okay.
So it just washes.
Pretty
in the
much.
bo- For the bottom line.
It should. Sharon will walk us through it. We'll get to it. Okay. Any questions on that one? Thank you, Sharon, for that explanation.
But why are we paying for someone who's out of state?
Because
Okay.
that's the program
Good
that
question.
meets his needs the best.
So
Care
the family lives in Maine, in Acton, and the student attends the Monarch School in Rochester, New Hampshire.
Rochester, yeah.
We don't have a facility like that nearby. We used to have a place called the Morrison Center, but they
Yeah.
closed, so.
I remember the Morrison Center, yeah. We
But they're
also,
still open, but they're not, I mean, they're not what they used to be. I mean, I'm not saying that in a negative way.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that they don't have the staffing available. Monarch is much closer to us as well, even though it's over the border. It's closer than going to Scarborough, you know, so,
Yeah.
we just got approval for her to go there instead, so.
and we've had student at John Powers in the past, which is over in New Hampshire. When we
Yeah,
think
with
out of
great
state or
success,
in New.
by the way.
What's
With
that?
great success.
He's back,
With
yeah.
great success,
Yeah.
yes.
So sometimes New Hampshire is closer than Scarborough. I mean, you gotta think of where we
He's not
are.
really an out-of-state kid.
What's that?
He's not an out-of-state kid.
No, he's an
no,
active
no,
kid
no.
going to school and
Yeah,
and a
I-
placement.
No, she said they're sending him out.
We're
of
sending
state.
him out of state.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Oh, no, yes,
Okay,
yeah,
no.
the student just goes, the student resides in Acton.
Yeah,
Okay.
what grade is he in?
Can't say that.
You
say
can't say it.
Can't.
We're such a
Is
small
Is it-
school, that's all.
Is
Yeah,
it
just looking at how-
Elementary, middle, high.
How
How many
long
more
would be in the
High school
budget?
level.
Understood. High school level, thank
Okay,
you.
perfect.
There's your answer. Yeah, right, good question. I see, like, how long do we own this
Right.
as a cost?
And I
Correct.
Sanford can't even provide the services that this student
Okay.
needs, so.
Yeah.
Because I tried and they don't have the capacity to do that, so.
Enough.
Okay.
So John, the difference after that shift of cost from tuition up to the contracted services, that $39,000 roughly difference in cost that's been added to that, that's for the nursing services, is that? Well,
Plus there,
80,000 for the nursing.
80,000.
but she had some less students, right, Sharon?
You want to look at those lines first and then take that? I got your question, Charlie. Let's go down and look at each line and then we'll resurface that question.
No worries.
So that
Okay,
we
so
got.
where are we now? We're
So we're
down
on,
to
yep,
30,
legal,
3450?
legal
No,
services, 3450 looks like it's flat. No
Yeah.
change with $2,000.
And we haven't, since I've been here, we haven't spent a cent of that, so.
But you know how quickly an IEP legal,
Yeah.
$2,000
Yeah.
is picking up the phone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Student transportation purchased from private source. Sharon, this one's down significant, almost 46,000 or 38%. Let's talk about that. We're gonna bundle these reductions in a minute with a question from Charlie, so go ahead.
I think it's two reasons. I think number one is that we purchased the vans.
Yeah.
And I think that has been helpful. And that we haven't really placed that idea in the budget until this year. I think we needed to just realize that we're doing well with the vans and we need to acknowledge that. And number two, there's going to be one less student that's going to need transportation, we hope, in the fall. So they'll need transportation, but it's going to be a closer distance.
Perfect.
So right now we only have 4 students who require transportation services in the whole, under this auspices, under this line item.
How many
And next
fours
year
is
we
that?
anticipated only being 3.
4 to 3. Just a reminder, she mentioned the vans 2 years ago with the first round of COVID money. We purchased 3 then new vans with federal money, which now we're seeing we didn't pay for those, but we're seeing the cost reduction because we can use our own vehicles versus work with our transportation company to do it.
Yes.
So we only have to get billed for the driver and the fuel we buy, but we
Yep.
own the van. So that is
Yes,
helpful.
and it's
Glad you
been
brought it up.
it's been significant since I've been here. This is my 6th year here. Big difference.
So the next one is going to be source 5610. This is the tuition paid to school units within the state, meaning these are special purpose schools, Sharon. And here again, we're seeing a reduction of, 46% or $34,000. Again, it sounds like your transportation's down because we're bringing somebody home here to the school for sure.
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
And then that amount is that 134 is the tuition private schools that we talked about that we shifted over to contracted services.
The next line.
Which is going to be the next line. Tuition to private schools.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
I
okay,
jumped.
you're one line down. We'll just hit that now, because what this does is it's a reduction of almost 56% or a reduction of almost $135,000. Charlie, there's the difference to the up top. What's not showing is the $80,000 I put in for a medical provider.
Okay, so it's not, I don't see that in here at all, the 80K.
It's in there.
It's in the 173.
But
You
yeah,
have to
I
kind of
understand what
factor
Charlie
in
was
a
saying.
kid leaving, maybe reducing
Oh,
the
you've
cost.
already buried that in there then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Charlie's
there's
saying that
still-
173 minus
It doesn't
134
work.
isn't $80,000.
Oh, no, it's not going
But
to be
there's still
exact.
39 missing,
Right.
I was just
Yes.
wondering,
I'll tell you.
No.
that was covering something else then.
Yeah, so but there's other stuff
Yeah.
that kind of,
Good
Right.
enough.
Yeah.
There are other things. We had to increase the OT services, speech services. We contract with Center for Communication for our speech services at Acton. We contract with Saco Bay Therapy Services for our OT and PT services. And that has increased a little bit because we have more kids that need those services. So that's why it's not a wash, because I had to increase in other ways. So if you saw, like, I'm sorry, Paula, maybe you can explain it better, but
No.
I think we're good, Sharon. I think, looking around the room, everybody's
Yeah.
kind of nodding their head, okay.
Okay.
But if you were to
Yeah.
net that all out, what is the percent increase?
You there?
She is.
You there?
yeah.
She's there.
You mean
So
the services.
Paula, that's a good question
What
that
do you
Lee,
say?
Lee asked a specific numbers question.
No, if you net that out, what is the percent increase?
It's not, it's a decrease, isn't it? When you say net all that out, what are you talking
Talking
about?
about for
You got the
contracted
special
services or
ed.
for tuition?
The 3440 plus, right, the
The state-
5140, right, those lines you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take all those, And what does it come out to?
I would say contracted services has gone up, but I can't answer that
That's all
question.
right, I'll do the calculation later.
Thanks.
The next one is travel, which is source 5,800, and it's flat at $1,815, and that's travel for conferences for teachers in the special ed department. The next one is...
Hold on that one.
Yep, go ahead. You want to go back, Ray? Yep.
Yeah, on that travel.
Yep.
'Cause I see your at 1815 minutes, you know, but your actual usage was at 198.90.
Year to date.
That's year-to-date.
That's year to date.
Year-to-date,
Yeah,
We're only halfway.
halfway through the year.
Well,
We haven't
you
used
know,
much of it.
I will tell you that this year, there hasn't been, I mean, I've never submitted for travel myself, but I think we have only had a couple of teachers that have, like Michelle Libby went to get training in Augusta. There hasn't been much in the area of travel for professional development.
And year to date, Sharon, that Augusta trip isn't showing here.
No.
That hasn't been billed
She
out
just-
yet.
she just
So she was
did it.
gone for a
Alright.
week for safety care.
Yep.
So
Right.
that'll
Yep.
change the picture of that quickly when
Right,
we get to our
exactly.
warrant. Yeah.
But the year before, we spent
Almost the whole thing.
1676.
Almost the whole
so-
thing, roughly. A couple $100
Yep.
short, yeah.
Yep.
All right. Okay, Ray? All right, yes, sir. So we're gonna look at instructional supplies. And it's flat at 6,500. No change. Books and periodicals. Looks like it's going to be up $150.
No,
Down
no,
150.
Okay, and that, I'll tell you why.
Should be parentheses around
Because
that.
I want
remind
to
us that.
purchase
That's a percent.
a math intervention program for the lower levels for Michelle Libby to use with the young students.
Did you all hear that?
I've already purchased it for the upper levels. It's called Number Worlds, and I want to purchase it for Michelle.
We lost her.
Is she there?
150%?
$1,500.
No, it went down.
No,
No,
it's
it
going
went
to
up.
go
1,500 or
Adding a new
150%.
program.
Yeah, it went
She
up
added a new
150.
program,
Yeah.
correct.
A new program.
Right, it
It's a
was,
new program.
was 1,000, is 2,500, up 15 or 150%.
Yeah,
Okay. You know what, we're really close to the end. I wouldn't even
We
bother.
lost.
that's even
Yeah.
math.
Yeah, I think we can get it
No,
in
we've
here.
got just two left.
You got two left and you got totals. Equipment was, is up $900 or $81.81, and that's equipment expenses for students. We lost Sharon. Paula, when we went over this with her this morning, there's a couple of kiddos that needed a couple of extra things. I'm gonna be careful because
Yes.
one is in a mobile device, let's
Right.
just say, right?
Right.
Okay, the only one in that
Yeah.
particular position. Okay, then the last one is dues and fees, which is flat, no change. So overall, which is good, it's up
pretty
I know.
under 3% increase in special ed is actually really good for us. 'Cause
amazing.
Year to year, it's good.
Yeah.
And the
Unheard of.
increase in numbers. The
Right.
increase in our numbers, but yet special ed isn't up because she was able to move kids back here, not have that tuition to a special school and not have the transportation to the special school. Added a few people to make that work.
John, just a little different type of question, but what kind of due diligence does the school do on accepting new students and making sure they're actually residents of
I can help with
Acton?
that. Yeah, I know exactly what that looks like. So,
Yes, he does.
yeah. Matter of fact,
knocks on doors.
Matter of fact, I'm not gonna say where, but I literally drove to a home this morning because I had a half-hour window and I said, I'm gonna see if the kid's home. Because I was concerned that the student isn't living in Acton anymore. My suspicion is correct. So here's the thing. First of all, do our kids who come to Acton and get into Acton, do they stay here, or do they move and not tell anybody? So that's the second situation I dealt with today. So now what I'm gonna do is reach out to the parent of that student and say, it's my understanding you're not living in that home in Acton, where are you living? And if she gives me another address, I'll go knock on that door until I find them. But the reality is, I can do something like keep that student here with what's called a superintendent's waiver, because it's an older student, and we're almost out of the school year, so
Yeah.
why would I disrupt the
Right,
education?
right.
Mother's driving the kid, we're good, kid's already here, kid's doing fine, but we don't have residency anymore. So sometimes it changes during the school year.
Right.
Say we're into September and people move in and they say, hi, we're here and we want to get our 3 kids into school. The first thing I need is guardianship. Do you kind of, for lack of a better term, are you the legal responsible guardian? Do you own this child? Is he yours? So you have to check on, who's responsible for the child. So guardianship.
Yep.
You'd be surprised how many times. Well, I'm the grandparent. I'm like, you're not the guardian. Where's the guardian? Well, he's in the military. He's in Japan. And I'm like, this is going to be tricky because you need to now go to the local court and get temporary guardianship for this child to enroll. So there's a lot of layers. Guardianship. The other one is residency, which you're talking about. And residency is tricky too because you either own a home or you don't, or you're renting a home or you don't, or you move back in with mom and dad or you didn't. That third one, moving back in with mom and dad, we've seen a lot of in the last few years. Because I think it's tough for young people to make it out there in the real world. I mean, try to make a rent, try to buy a house if you're 26, 27 years old. So we see a lot of people who move back to Acton and they're living with their extended family. In that case, the grandparents are generally somebody we might know.
Yeah.
And they sign an affidavit that says this family is living with us here. And they sign an affidavit that says, under perjury, forfeiture, you don't sign this if they're not living with you because you're accountable.
What about homeless?
Homeless is a whole nother ball of wax. So we have some of those. The student may, for instance, live in the Biddeford area. For whatever reason, they're not living in the Biddeford area. They're now living over here in Acton with a friend. But the question comes down to, where does the student go to school? All schools strive their best for educational consistency, so we try to keep them in what's called their school of origin. So we would do what we can to keep that student in Biddeford School Department. What we generally do is figure out the transportation, which could be as simple as we'll get the child there, you get him home. Or it might be, we'll get him there back and forth and I'll bill you for half of the cost. Or you'll get him there back and forth and you bill me for half the cost. So transportation is usually the sticky wicket to get that child to a new place. And homeless has to be, is it fixed, regular, and adequate? So those are the kind of 3 things. Because lots of times somebody might say, well, I'm homeless, but if it's fixed, reasonable, and adequate, you're not homeless. You're just not living where you were before. And things get a little sketchy when you get around campgrounds, because you can't live in a campground this time of year. So we've seen a lot of different models that fit homeless. But we have some homeless students we're transporting and we're splitting the cost. And sometimes we have students that may end up being Acton students and something happens to their house and they have to move over to Waterboro, but they want to stay at Acton Elementary, so Waterboro or 57
Hopefully
is...
it's a temporary thing.
It should be, and sometimes it goes on a little longer than one would hope, but homelessness should be a temporary piece, and we try to keep the educational continuity through the school of origin. But we have a couple right now. Yep, indeed. Okay. All right, can I tell you a little quick story?
Tell us.
I had somebody who told me they registered their pre-K child here, and I said, okay, so they registered their pre-K child, and about 4 days into it, after they gave us a legal lease and everything and where they lived, one of our staff members goes, it's funny, that pre-K lives in a place that's a seasonal camp, no one's living in there. I said, isn't that funny? So I went over to the camp, and I sure enough, there's a blue tarp over the wood stove, every door had a padlock on the outside, and I took photos of all this, and then the mom came to pick up the kid, and I said, just go see you for a second. I said, you told me you lived at this address, right? Mm-hmm. I said, and you gave me a lease for that address. Uh-huh. I said, is that your door? And she looked at it, and I said, it's locked from the outside, and that blue tarp over the stove doesn't look like it's been used for very much. So then she kind of backpedaled, and I said, well, I'm not trying to embarrass you. I said, clearly you're caught. You don't live here. You made up a lease off the internet. We bought it. You don't live here. I said, it's Monday. I'll give you till Friday, and then you need to kind of enroll your student wherever you're living. And give that child a chance to say goodbye to the friends they met for the 3 or 4 days you were here. And off they went. So I do have to play constable every now and then and run around to make sure, because you have to, because people, pre-K is great.
Yes.
Pre-K is great because it's all day, right?
Yeah.
And if I can just kind of get into pre-K over here, I don't have to do a daycare somewhere else. So people will fudge things to get that, and that's why we got to do due diligence.
Yeah, you can follow them around.
Jeanette. I suggest we don't do that. I'll just go over and introduce myself. Jeanette, stop following people.
Well, she meant other people
Oh.
and start following.
There's something else
Nick was
that,
gonna get a
John,
baseball bat and, you know.
there was something else I wanted to ask you.
Go ahead,
At
we're
some
still
point,
in
fact,
session.
I
Yeah.
called you, I was gonna,
I called you back.
you did, and I
Okay.
called you today, and I didn't get through.
Okay.
But anyways, what I was trying to get a handle on is what are the metrics that you measure yourself on for the efficiency of operation? You know, your cost per student, type of expense ratios, and then on the other side, performance standards. You know, how do you measure yourself against other school systems?
Absolutely. Sometimes the state of Maine, there was a time under a different administration where the administration, the governor and that administration would
Yep.
do a report card on schools based on factors like attendance and grades and those kinds of metrics that you speak of.
Right.
We currently don't have that kind of pairing right now under this current administration, but there are standardized test scores that happen in the spring, and those usually come out in the fall. In a best case scenario, they would come out in the fall, and you can compare how your schools do
Yep.
by location, by county, comparable like, you can measure all that, and sometimes people use that to boost real estate values. Look how well the school's performing. You want your kids to come here. So those have been historically in the past. I guarantee you at the town meeting,
Yep.
there'll be a question about essential programs and services from somebody who really understands the formula because he was in the legislature when it was created back years ago. I happen to know that formula pretty well, so there'll be two of us in the room that understand it. And the question will come up, why are you above essential programs and services? That's the metrics you're asking about. So the state has a formula that says in most communities, this is what it costs to raise a child at the primary level and at the secondary level. Secondary is high school.
Yep.
That's what we suggest the cost should be to raise a child.
Per student.
Per student, and then they add a 1.5 factor for special education, because it's a little more. And there's different pieces that are into that formula. Now, we always come out above. So do many, many other
will
small
always
schools. We
come
will
out
always
above.
come out above.
Because
and
they
we'll explain
don't
it.
include
Go ahead.
transportation.
Yep.
That's not in it? Kindergartens, nope.
Pre-K,
High
no.
school, no,
They
no high
don't,
school.
they don't include your
Specials.
full-time specials like music, art.
They would say you should have a .2 art teacher.
Yeah,
Well,
an
we have a
art teacher,
full-timer.
Like 1 or 2 days a week or something, and which means all your
Because,
kids
yeah,
wouldn't
if
get
you
it every
have
week.
200 and whatever kids, they say if you have 200 and something kids, then your gym should be, .3, so 3 days a week or whatever.
1.7 person
Yeah.
teacher.
What the state uses that for is the state subsidy. So we're a low receiver because of property values in the town of Acton. So we don't receive a lot of state subsidy, but we do receive some. And that state subsidy that we receive is based on that formula that Mary just explained with all these different factors in it. I could look, and I had to do this one year because we drilled a little deeper and I gave some data on small towns and how much they are over the state, over the EPS, what the state says you should raise in your town, and what the additionals are, and we were right there in the middle. There were some that were way higher and some that were a little bit lower, but that conversation ended because we were kind of in the mix of most public schools. It'll come up.
There were actually school districts that fell in line with the essential programs and services.
There are a few.
You
Yeah.
can if you have a huge population, because then
Yeah.
it
And low property
it
values.
evens it out.
And then
Yeah,
you have
low
an,
property.
or you could have an island school that's costing you $250,000 for 3 kids, and they
Right.
board the teacher, and they're 7 times over the essential programs and services with their ferry service.
Well, I
Just
went-
saying, I mean, it depends on where you are in the state of
You
Maine.
can't
I went
say,
online
here's
to
your-
the main
here's your $5
Gov,
million
Ed
budget.
Gov thing, and they
You
they
divide
by
stopped showing
200 or
stats
something.
back in 2018.
They might not have up-to-date stats beyond 2018.
2018?
Wouldn't shock me. Nope. It used to be 2-year-old costs, and you could follow those. I'm dating myself back in the 90s. But it's no longer the 2-year-old cost. The government, the Department of Ed has said, this is what we believe, and this is what your state subsidy is gonna look like based on what we believe. It doesn't affect us that much because we're such a low receiver. But if we were in a big district with some high poverty rates and say the budget's about $30 to $40 million, which is reasonable in the state of Maine with high poverty rates, half of that, 20 million, might be state subsidy.
Yeah.
So if you take a hit on $20 million of 5%, you gotta find that somewhere. we're not really dealing with that. Our numbers are much lower
Yeah.
than that. But I guarantee you, it'll come up on Saturday morning on the 6th. It always does,
Every year.
every year.
Yeah,
No.
every year.
But it's a good question to ask, because you have to vote on that article.
I would
Yeah, it's a great
assume,
question.
I would assume
In the
the-
past?
part of the answer is gonna be, this is where we are,
That's
relative to it, right?
That's exactly what the answer is.
Yeah.
That's exactly what the answer is.
And so when you get done with the budget, will we have that kind of information available to us?
It is, and as a matter of fact, there's gonna be an article that says, it's written.
It's written into the article.
To the end of the article, that the state says we should raise this much, and we're gonna raise this much more. And it's yay or nay.
And it's also written into the article, if I remember correctly, it's written into the article that what the essential services do not cover, like transportation, kindergarten, specials,
Well, pre-K.
pre-K and all those things. All those things that we provide that they don't cover.
I think it's very interesting when schools are
Yeah.
trying to cut their budgets. Art goes, music goes.
All the extracurricular
Sports
things first.
Yeah.
And maybe not sports, but art and music.
They go
And the
first.
correlation between art and music and math and reading.
I agree.
Mhm.
Definitely,
goes
music
and
is
this goes.
huge with the brain
Gotta
development.
work your brain.
It's gotta work your brain.
I mean, my kids take instruments.
It's incredible.
They don't?
They
Oh,
did.
they did, yeah.
Yeah.
There were 4 people in the band, 2 were my kids.
There you go.
I was like,
You
you're
were-
great, you'll be up there, 4 of you.
You were half the band. That's awesome.
Really great.
There is a third chapter to tonight, and that's Paula. What I'm gonna
Oh,
ask you
I'm
is,
sorry.
no, it's okay, we're not done yet, we're close.
Okay.
There are 2 articles, we need to take out the old one and put in the new one, and Paula will go over those changes. Nothing else has changed but the line item she has you look at, so please only look at those.
If I don't have enough, I'll make more copies.
All right. I don't need one particularly, I can share with Judy or,
5. These are the ones we already have in the book that
Yeah,
have
yeah.
changes.
But
it's gonna be,
That's
it
good.
H5.
No,
should
that's
be 8, yeah,
amazing.
8.5 is stipends
I'm just gonna
and office administration. All right, Joyce. It looks like we got extras.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you one. Does everybody down there have one?
No.
Okay, go that way. I'm giving you one.
I'll go make some more.
That's okay, I'm gonna share with Joyce.
Okay.
I think we're gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay, Paula.
This is
Article 5 and Article 8.
Article 5 and Article 8.
That's 8, there's 5, I don't need it. Pass those. I'm gonna share with you.
Yeah, here's some more. 8 and 5. This is.
Why don't, yeah, well, I don't know if you need to. Okay.
I think we're okay.
I think we're good, Paula.
Okay. Wait,
You know.
one didn't get it.
We can just, we can make them after, what we can do is, let's go over it.
Yeah, and
We
you
can
let me know
share,
if
and
you
then
need
we
a
can,
copy.
we can make a copy, 'cause I can get
I'll
one
share them
anytime.
with you.
I had another article.
Well, I got,
Those are the old ones, we just updated these.
oh, I see.
So at the bottom, at the bottom, I asked her to put a date on it. That's the one you're gonna wanna look at and replace, okay?
Yes, took me a while to figure out.
Anytime we replace an article for you guys, we're gonna have a date on it. And that's gonna happen, it can happen again before we're done, where I'm gonna come back and say, okay, something's changing, change, shift it,
This goes.
yeah. So Paul, wanna take 5?
Yep.
Wanna just explain the changes and what the cost center is, so we can look at
Yep,
just
so
that?
Article 5, which is other instruction, the only thing that changed, we added 2 coaches. We
And what
added-
source is that?
That is the very first 1,500.
Source 1,500 stipends paid, okay?
So we added the boys lacrosse and girls volleyball coaches.
Is that the only change in this article?
That one and the tax, and the and benefits, the line down. That was
The second one.
That was the only change.
Mary was at the stipend meeting that we had.
So was CJ.
CJ was at the meeting that we had. There was a parent, couple of teachers, Paula and I. And what happened is, we have to have by contract with the teachers and their CBA, collective bargaining agreement, there's a piece called the stipend committee. 2 school board members, 2 school committee members, a couple of union reps, a couple of administrators, and a parent. So we did that. We didn't do that when we did the first stipend round, we did it this week.
Yep.
Yep.
So those
Okay.
changes are reflective on what this group
Yesterday.
made. they made the changes. So it was yesterday, the day before, right?
I
Was
don't
it just yesterday we
Right,
met?
yesterday.
My
Yesterday.
goodness.
I have no idea
What
what
a
day
long
it is.
week it's been.
Yeah.
So anyway, that
Been
change
driving
was
all
made,
over.
and that's all you have. Any particular questions about that? The stipends got changed, so we need to go back and reflect that in the budget.
Are these new positions?
They're,
No.
go
The
ahead.
boys lacrosse is gonna take over the baseball. The boys aren't interested in baseball. This is 7th and 8th grade team. So they
Baseball
they
being
all
replaced
decided
with
to do
lacrosse?
lacrosse. So
Can you believe
that's-
it?
I love it. My grandson's in
Yeah.
I
lacrosse.
believe
So I think
the
the-
addition is the girls
Is-
volleyball.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the interim athletic director for the spring season wants to have 2 girls volleyball coaches, so they can have 2 teams and play other towns and play each other, is what is the hope that will happen.
Because it's that many girls who
Yeah.
wanna play volleyball.
So this is 7th,
Yeah.
and
Like
so.
middle school.
Yes,
Right.
middle school, 7th and
Right.
8th grade. So
Correct.
they, I guess, sent out a survey
Yeah.
of the middle school students and said, do
Which
you want to
sports?
play baseball, because we have baseball in the budget, or do you want to play something else? Here's a couple of other options that you could choose from. Do you want to play softball, because we've had a softball team in the past, or do you want to play, here's a couple of other ones. So those are what the students chose for this year.
So you're expanding by one,
Really one team.
One coach.
One coach.
Yeah.
Because the blacks will be picked up by baseball, because baseball's not gonna be played, so we'll just shift the resources, so.
Yeah.
I mean, we put baseball, like, we could have just put spring sports in an aggregate number, and then it just
Yeah.
goes to wherever the spring sports are.
Yeah.
The new invention was volleyball, that's really catching on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it is.
There's an
like
SMAA
pickleball.
league now that we're now part of,
Where's
we're
the
on the
pickleball
schedule.
team?
It's big at Sanford High
Yep.
School.
Yeah, and
Massachusetts.
Nassau has volleyball clinics
There you
too for
Yeah,
for
they
middle
do,
school girls,
yeah.
and they actually invite some of those girls up to the high school to
Yeah.
play sometimes with the high school team. So it kind of like gets the middle school kids knowing the high school coaches.
Okay. And the good news is, we had internal people who took those coaching positions.
Oh, great.
For, right?
Yeah.
And we also are now on the roster, and we have games scheduled.
Fantastic.
So Sam's done a nice job of already getting the spring together for us.
Yeah.
So that's good work, yeah.
Sam, is that position gonna be another new hire?
So the
Well, she's
position,
an
right.
interim.
She's
Interim.
interim to get us through the spring.
Yeah.
And then, as I mentioned, when I did the AD job description,
Mm-hmm.
she knows, Sam knows for sure, that position is just interim until, to get us out to
Okay.
June.
Yeah.
And then she knows we're gonna have to rehire under that job description.
Yeah.
And then that'll be somebody who takes the stipend and runs with it for the following year, all sports.
All
Yeah.
sports, okay.
Yeah, so if she's successful and interested, she might throw her hat in the ring, is my guess, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's go to 8, Paula. And I think we're only talking the top 2 again, or give us the
Correct.
source?
Correct. So source 1040,
1040.
that is the addition of the principal.
The principal, yep.
So the difference we have as a placeholder is 131,885, correct?
Correct.
That's the new difference by adding that person. And that's benefits included if the person needs the benefits,
Right,
correct?
we put everything on that
And
one line.
what you don't see here, though, and you'll see in regular instruction next time we meet, is the assistant principal that wasn't in this line item anyway, right?
Right.
Will be moving over to a
To the
teaching
teaching
position, and it'll show there.
Right.
So unlike Sharon's, where you could see the offset in one
Yeah.
article,
Yeah.
you won't see this in one article because she moved to a different article.
Right.
She moved to the
She moved to
teaching.
the teaching.
Right, I wanted you to say that, because otherwise you'd be like, where's the offset? The
Right.
offset's gonna show at the next meeting.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that placement is roughly right around what York County principals of elementary schools are getting. Some are a little south, not many, quite a few are a bit north. I'm hoping that the reputation of the school and the staff and the kids in the community will attract somebody to say, hey, I might make a couple grand less over here, but it's gonna be a better gig. And John's out of here in the next couple of years anyway, maybe I'm superintendent. So for me, to give you an example, for me, when I first joined here, I didn't take any kind of a pay cut to come here in this position. I was a high school principal, but over time, my old high school position as principal pays more than what I get paid now, if I wanted to stay with it. I didn't want to stay with that. This is a better balance and a better lifestyle for me, even though it's 50 miles and being a high school principal. I've done that. I don't want to do that again, even if you're gonna pay me 15
could,
grand more.
Tammy.
It isn't worth it. So somebody might go, whoa, lifestyle, great community, cool people, excellent kids. Maybe I could be superintendent. So I think this price point will be attractive with the idea that sometimes you got to take 2 steps back to get 20 forward if it's the right person. And we want somebody who's thinking like that. We don't want somebody who's going to come in and look for their best 3 years and then go somewhere else or retire. We want somebody who's going to stick around. So that's that.
Please. Please stick around. Please be good and
John.
please stick around.
Tied to that, is the teaching position being filled? Is that an existing position or is that an ad?
It depends on how you look at it. We're gonna be adding 2 positions to that regular instruction budget for next year to keep our class sizes reasonable, but I won't have to hire for one of them because I'm putting the assistant principal in one of those.
So we haven't gotten to that part.
Nope, that'll be next time we meet. And that's the bulk of our, I tell you, that article is the bulk of our operating budget because it's every teacher in the building. And that's all CBA, that's all contracted through a collective bargaining agreement.
And how long a period of time do you do your bargaining agreement?
3 years. So
Every
we're
3 years?
This particular budget, we know all the numbers, so we're looking out into next year's agreement. But after that, if it's Mary and Amanda, and I'm pretty sure it will be, next year, Mary and Amanda will be looking at the next 3 years on behalf of the school committee and negotiating with the unions about the
It
next 3
doesn't have
years.
to be 3 years. I don't want anybody to think that the teachers would agree to 3 years every time. They're allowed 1, 2,
Yeah.
3.
Oh, really?
3 is the most. We try to get the most so we don't have to sit down at the
Right,
table
every
again.
year. Have you ever had less than 3? You haven't?
Yeah, we had a
'Cause,
1 year.
We've done,
Oh,
okay,
really?
we've done 2
Yeah.
contracts with me and they've both been
Yeah,
3.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so next year, this is the last year
Yes.
that you're on
Correct.
this contract.
Second.
So next year's budget,
This is the second year, right?
Second year.
we're living in the second year.
We're living in the second
Yeah.
year right
And that-
now.
So this budget is the
The
third.
third, then we're done.
Yeah.
So next year, when we're doing this budget, you very well could be negotiating, so you don't really
You may
know
not
your,
know the actual numbers.
you may not know the
That's
actual
always
numbers.
horrible.
It's a hard year when you have an open contract and you're building a budget.
Yeah.
It's hard, because you don't know where you're gonna land.
When's the contract end?
Where's the what?
When does the contract
It's
end?
June
Next year.
30th of 2025, this one.
Yeah. So our costs in this budget are fixed, we know what they are. Next year, not so much.
I mean, we do try to start early, the budget process, but, I mean, we would start in September, but maybe the teachers' union says, yeah, well, we don't have anybody who's willing to do it until January, and then you're like, that's when the budget's going on, you know? So we do try.
So just in general, what's baked into the salary increases for the teachers?
Nothing's baked in.
Depends.
Well, it's
step.
contract.
Oh, it depends on what's
The
negotiated.
contracts are on the website. They're
Three.
public information.
It's
Two.
three.
You mean right now, going
right
into
now,
this year
3 and
coming?
4 or
Yeah.
something like that.
3 or 4%?
Yeah.
Increase,
yeah.
yeah, that was a question that somebody asked, like
It was
the
4.5,
town
I
hall.
think, for teachers.
It's 4.5 for teachers was, this
Yeah.
this
This
budget.
one.
It depends on the year too,
Yes,
so
it
the
does, yeah.
CBA's isn't a flat 3 across the board. It might be 2 this year,
Yeah.
1 the next, and 4 the last, so they get an average. It depends on how they want to negotiate it.
And we do look at the insurance at the same time, how much the school pays and how much the employee pays, and
So we've gone from 100%, we brought it down to
We're like
90.
We're at 89, I think, right now.
Yeah.
We're at
Okay, we
89, yeah.
The world I came out, it was 50/50.
Yeah.
Good
Oh,
questions, I
yeah,
like when you
yeah.
ask,
Good
yeah,
job, that would be nice.
yeah.
I remember when the hospital
Okay.
paid my whole
There's one
insurance.
more
That's what I
change.
said.
Is there?
Okay.
Yeah,
Change, I'm
one more
sorry.
change.
Okay.
The third line down, 1,500 stipends paid. That's a new
Oh,
stipend
thank you.
that we added. It's called administrative aid.
So, the reasoning behind this, and I'm not looking at it, can you just tell me how much that is?
It was $3,536.
$3,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so the
There it is.
reasoning behind this is this. With the advent of a new principal coming in and the movement of Patty going back into the classroom, you have a certified administrator in me, and you have a certified administrator in the new person. Takes 2 people to kind of run the building. Patty and I are never out of the building at the same time. One of us has to be here. With the anticipation of the new principal, maybe or maybe not, wanting to tag along with some of the traditions in this building, and let me tell you what a couple of them are. We have a 6th grade camping trip. It has me out of the building for 2 days and 1 overnight, sleeping in the woods with a bunch of kids and chaperones, and it's a blast, and it's something everybody looks forward to when they get in the 6th grade. If the new principal thinks, hey, that's a great idea, then that new principal needs to learn what that is. So the new principal and I would bring our teachers and our parents and our chaperones, and off we would go. That doesn't leave anybody at the building to run the place. So for this 1 year in transition, somebody like Patty could get a sub for those 2 days, put on a radio, and come right back in and run the building. So it's kind of like it's a substitute for an administrator. How's that? We don't have a substitute for an administrator right now, but we might need one next year. So it's there for about $3,000, and it's well worth it, so that the two of us could go somewhere if we had to. Once the mentoring's over, it'll be just like Patty and I. One of us is always in the building, and it's almost always both of us are in the building.
How many people in the building, you may not know the actual number, roughly how many people in the building are certified administrators?
Other than the certified administrative sitting here, like other people?
Yeah, like,
2
okay,
that I know of.
Okay.
One's retiring this year,
yeah,
which leaves you 1.
okay.
Yeah, and
So-
if that person was interested, sure, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I have to put it out there, I'm not saying it's Patty, but she would be the one, if we did it right now, it would be Patty. And she's well aware of, she's like, I'd be happy to put on a radio, get me a sub for the dad, and run the place, she's already done it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
but
just
it
didn't
is
know
open,
if-
it is open to anybody. They
I
have to
just
have
didn't
some-
know if it was gonna be the same person every time, or if it's like everybody gets the flu at the same time, and it's like, okay,
That's when.
you today and you
Yeah.
tomorrow.
That's when we don't go camping.
Yeah.
That's when we say, we'll do it another night.
Yeah.
I'll stick around because they're all sick. Yeah.
Or the nurse is saying, hey, we've hit that threshold that the state
Yeah.
says.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing us back to that.
Yes,
I was
I know
moving
that.
towards other things. All right, I'm looking at probably closing this meeting, and then we have to transition, and I got your paperwork.
Okay.
That's on you guys.
Yeah.
We're done?
I think we are. You gotta
I think
vote to
we
get,
are.
you gotta vote to go out of this.
For a vote to go out of.
vote to go into.
Vote to go into.
Vote to go into an executive session.
At 7:14.
At 7:15.
7:15. By who?
By me.
By
CJ motions, Amanda seconds.
Jane and Amanda.
It's a 5-0 vote.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, now what we'll do is we'll recess to get everything cleaned up, and then we'll meet.